Chapter 6. The Ghost Calls Again. Nancy Drew said goodbye to Abigail Rowan and, after promising to call again soon, left the cottage with Rosemary Turnbull. "It's nice of you to offer to take me to the mansion," Rosemary remarked, as she stepped into the blue roadster. "I came by bus, you know, and it's a slow, tiresome ride that way. Floretta will be delighted to see me back home earlier than I had planned." "Is your sister inclined to be nervous?" "Oh, yes. The slightest thing sets her off. She wouldn't stay at the mansion alone at night for anything in the world." "I don't wonder she is nervous. So many strange things have happened there." "Floretta is certain the mansion is haunted. I keep telling myself I don't believe in ghosts, and I don't. But those shadows!" Rosemary shuddered. "There's something uncanny about it." From the general conversation, Nancy Drew had gathered that Rosemary Turnbull was not the type of woman to be easily frightened. She was eager to visit the old stone house, for she felt that she had encountered a genuine mystery. "Have you told anyone about the strange happenings?" she inquired presently. Rosemary shook her head. "Only the sheriff, and he just sniffed. Seemed to think someone was playing a joke on us. Today I told Abigail Rowan, but otherwise I haven't mentioned it to a soul. You see, I thought that if we should want to sell, the rumor that the house was haunted wouldn't help the sale." "Hardly," Nancy replied. "But you don't wish to sell, do you?" "Only as a last resort." Nancy drove rapidly, for the hour was late, and she feared that unless she hurried, she would not reach her home before dark. When at last she did reach Cliffwood, it was nearly dusk. Rosemary directed her to the mansion, which was located in an isolated spot on the outskirts of Cliffwood. Through the tall oak and maple trees, which partially hid the house from the road, Nancy Drew caught her first glimpse of the place. She was a little startled, for with its two large turrets at the front, the Turnbull residence was not unlike a ruined castle. It was a large, massive structure, built of white stone which, with the passing of the decades, had blackened and crumbled. Undoubtedly, in years gone by, it had deserved the title of mansion, but now it could boast little of its old glory. With the ebb of the Turnbull fortune, the house had fallen into decay. As Nancy drove up the winding driveway, she could not help but notice the ghost-like shadows which the trees, swaying in the breeze, cast on the stone walls. A feeling of uneasiness came over her, a sensation which she was at a loss to explain. "There's something creepy about the place," she thought. As Miss Rosemary said, it's a perfect habitat for a ghost. Nancy was not superstitious, and certainly she did not believe in ghosts, but it seemed to her that the very air about the old place was oppressive. Perhaps Rosemary Turnbull had experienced the same sensation, for she turned her eyes toward the second story. "I don't see a light in Floretta's room," she observed. "I do hope nothing has happened while I have been away." Nancy stopped the roadster in front of the house, and Rosemary alighted. "You're coming in, aren't you?" she inquired hopefully. Nancy hesitated. "I intended to, but it's growing so late. I promised Father I'd be home before dark." "It's only a short way to River Heights from here. Floretta will be disappointed if you don't come in for a few minutes at least. I want you to hear her version of the mystery." "I am eager to hear it too," Nancy declared, switching off the motor. "All right, I'll come in even if it is late. Dad will forgive me his time." Rosemary fitted her latchkey into the lock, and opened the heavy front door. "We've thought it best to keep the house locked the last few weeks," she explained. As Nancy Drew stepped inside, she noticed that the entire house had the appearance of having been built in more opulent times than the present. The rooms were spacious, especially the living room, which was furnished with old-fashioned colonial furniture. The walls were adorned with massive, gold-framed portraits, obviously of ancestors of the Turnbull line. As Nancy gazed at the pictures, she realized that once the Turnbulls had been the leading family in Cliffwood. They had been a proud family, but with Rosemary and Florette, the line would die out. Little remained of a fortune which had once been large. Rosemary and Florette, while not poor, had an income only sufficient for their needs. Yet because they were the last of the Turnbulls, they were welcome in the best of society. "My great-great-grandfather," Rosemary commented, indicating one of the pictures which had attracted Nancy's interest. "He fought in the Revolution. I am sure if he were living today, no ghost would dare invade the mansion." And Rosemary smiled slightly. Nancy did not reply, for at that moment an elderly lady came hurrying down the stairway to the living room. In appearance, she closely resembled Rosemary, though she lacked her sister's firm chin. Nancy knew at once that it was Florette. She saw, too, that something had disturbed the woman, for she was so agitated that she failed to note the presence of a visitor. "Oh, Rosemary!" she burst out. "Why did you leave me here alone? I knew something terrible would happen." "Florette, you haven't seen anything?" Rosemary demanded shakily. "It's my diamond bar pin! It's gone!" "Oh, Florette, are you sure? Perhaps you misplaced it." "No, it's gone. I've looked everywhere. Oh, what shall I do? I can't bear to lose it." Florette turned and saw Nancy for the first time. She made a valiant attempt to compose herself. "I beg your pardon," she said, somewhat stiffly. Rosemary introduced Nancy Drew and explained that the young girl had offered to help solve the baffling mystery. "You've come just in time," Florette declared. "Oh, if only you can tell me what became of my bar pin. It was an heirloom. We've had it in the family for years." "When did you have it last?" Nancy asked quietly. "Only this afternoon. I was dressing in my room and was just completing my toilet when I heard the iceman at the back door. I dropped my bar pin on the dresser and hurried downstairs to let him into the kitchen." "Were you gone long?" Nancy interrupted. "Only a few minutes, not more than 10 at the most. When I came back, my pin was gone." "Are you certain it didn't drop to the floor, or perhaps fall behind the dresser?" "Oh, I've looked everywhere." Florette sank into a chair and buried her head in her hands. "I'm just sick about it. I wouldn't have lost it for anything in the world." Rosemary went to her sister and tried to comfort her. "We'll find the pin, Florette. I'm sure it will turn up somewhere." She spoke with confidence, but nevertheless turned uneasy eyes upon Nancy. "Perhaps a bird flew in at an open window and took the pin," Nancy suggested. "Oh, I'm sure that couldn't have happened," Florette insisted. "But if you'd like to see the room, I'll be glad to show it to you." She led the way up the narrow circular stairs, and Nancy and Rosemary followed. Florette's room was in the east wing. "Is this the top floor?" Nancy questioned. "The attic is above," Rosemary responded. She attempted to smile. "There's no ghost up there, though. I know because I looked myself. Floretta's room was small. Nancy noticed that it had only one door which opened into the hall. There were 2 windows, both screened. I left the pin right here, Floretta said, indicating the dressing table. A bird couldn't have taken it. I see now, Nancy said quietly. She crossed the room and examined the screens carefully. Apparently, they had not been touched, for an accumulation of dust was undisturbed. I know someone entered my room while I was talking with the Iceman, Floretta declared firmly. Oh, I don't want to stay in this horrible house another night. It's apparent no one entered by means of the windows, Nancy said quietly. Tell me, from where you stood in the kitchen, could you see the stairway? Why, I could have if I had looked, I suppose. The kitchen door was open. You saw no one go up the stairs? Not a soul, but someone might have entered the house when I had my back turned. Weren't the doors locked? Yes, I had forgotten that. And if anyone had gone up those stairs, wouldn't you have heard them? I think I would have, Floretta admitted. The stairs are old and they creak. Then how did the thief get in? Rosemary cried. Floretta's bar pin couldn't have walked off by itself. I wish I could tell you what became of the pin, but I can't, Nancy said regretfully. I'm as puzzled as you are. As she spoke, she turned and for the first time noticed a closet door. Was it possible that the thief had entered the house early in the day and had hidden in the closet, biding an opportune time to snatch the pin? Floretta divined Nancy's thought, and a look of horror came over her face. Oh, you don't suppose someone has been spying on us? She demanded fearfully. I never once thought of that closet. What if there's someone in there now? Rosemary laughed nervously. Don't be silly, Floretta. However, she eyed the closet door with misgiving and made no effort to investigate. Just to make sure there's no one inside, I'll have a look, Nancy remarked. She crossed the room and paused before the closet door. Hesitating only an instant, she jerked it open. End of chapter 6.